Deep in the ocean, something floats inside a sperm whale's gut that scientists once thought was pure myth. A lump of waxy treasure, worth more than gold, sitting inside the body of the biggest predator on Earth. This whale dives deeper than any submarine, holds its breath longer than any human could survive, and carries a brain 6 times the size of yours. Today we go inside that body, past the wax cannon in its skull, down into a stomach packed with giant squid beaks, all the way to a death that feeds the ocean floor for 50 years. If strange science and deep-sea mysteries pull you in, hit like and subscribe before we dive. Prepare yourself. We go inside the whale now. A sperm whale surfaces after an hour underwater, and inside its stomach sits something that has been there for years. Not food, not waste. A weapon left behind by an enemy the whale swallowed whole. Giant squid have beaks, hard, black, shaped like a parrot's mouth, built from a material almost as tough as your fingernail but sharper. When a sperm whale eats a giant squid, it swallows the whole body, tentacles and all. The soft parts break down fast. The beak does not. It sits in the whale's gut, sharp edges pointed outward, for years at a time. Picture swallowing a bag of small knives every week for your whole life, and never once cutting yourself on purpose. That is close to what a sperm whale's digestive system deals with, over and over, dive after dive. Scientists cut open stranded whales and find hundreds of these beaks packed inside one stomach chamber. Some whales carry beaks from squid species nobody has ever seen alive. The beak survives, the squid does not, and somehow the whale survives both. Here is where it gets stranger. The whale's body has a trick for dealing with all those sharp leftovers. It wraps them. Layer after layer of a waxy, sticky substance builds up around the beaks, smoothing their edges, locking them away so they cannot tear through the whale from the inside. This substance has a name that once made pirates and kings lose their minds with greed: ambergris. For centuries, nobody knew where ambergris came from. Sailors found grey, waxy lumps floating on the ocean, smelling strange, part sweet and part like the sea itself. They had no idea this treasure started as a whale's defense against a mouthful of squid weapons. They just knew it was worth a fortune, and they wanted more of it. Think about that for a second. One of history's most valuable substances, chased by explorers and traded across continents, formed by accident inside the gut of an animal protecting itself from getting shredded by its own dinner. But ambergris does not form in every whale. Only some sperm whales produce it, and scientists still are not sure exactly why. Maybe it is diet. Maybe it is something in that individual whale's body chemistry. Maybe it is simply luck, a slow accident that only happens under the right conditions, deep in the dark, over years nobody gets to watch. What we do know is this: the process takes time, years, sometimes decades. The whale carries this slow-forming treasure through hundreds of dives, through storms, through migrations across entire oceans, all while a chamber of its own body works like a factory nobody asked it to run, and the beaks keep coming. Every giant squid hunted in the crushing dark adds another weapon to the pile. Every dive risks a fight most of us will never see, in a part of the ocean sunlight has never touched. Somewhere down there right now, a sperm whale is swallowing another beak, wrapping it, waiting, carrying a secret inside its body that took humans thousands of years to even begin to understand, and that squid it just ate did not go down without a fight. Roll a sperm whale onto its side and you will see something that looks like a war map written in scar tissue. Circular marks, some as wide as a dinner plate, cover its skin from head to tail. Each one tells the same story: a fight for survival against an enemy with 8 arms and a taste for blood. Giant squid do not go quietly. When a sperm whale attacks one in the crushing dark of the deep ocean, the squid fights back with everything it has. Its arms are lined with suction cups, and each cup has a ring of hard, hooked teeth around the edge, almost like a bottle cap made of blades. When the squid clamps onto the whale's skin and pulls, those hooks tear through blubber like a zipper. The whale does not back off. It cannot. Down at these depths, in freezing black water far past where sunlight reaches, there is no room for retreat. The whale twists, bites, and drags the squid toward its jaw, while the squid claws and slices at anything it can reach. This is not a quick kill. It is a wrestling match between two of the largest predators on the planet, and it can last for many minutes before one side wins. When it's over, the whale carries the marks forever. Sperm whale skin does not fully heal the way human skin does. The circular sucker scars stay etched into the surface for the rest of the whale's life, sometimes 50-60 years. Marine biologists use these scars almost like fingerprints, matching patterns on one whale's body to sightings from years earlier, tracking a single animal's history of battles across an entire lifetime. Here is the part that stuns researchers most. Some of these scars are far too large for any squid species scientists have ever caught, filmed, or measured. The rings are massive, spaced wide apart, shaped by suction cups bigger than dinner plates. Whatever left those marks was enormous, larger than any confirmed giant squid on record. That means somewhere in the deep ocean, animals exist that have never been seen alive by human eyes. Their only proof is stamped into the skin of the whales that fought them and survived. We are reading a fight nobody filmed, a battle that happened thousands of feet down, using nothing but scar tissue as the only witness statement. Think about swimming blind through a football field of darkness, arms wrapping around you from every direction, hooks digging into your skin, and your only tools being your teeth and your size. That is a normal Tuesday for a hunting sperm whale. Most whales carry dozens of these scars, some carry hundreds. Each one marks a moment where the whale could have lost, could have been dragged deeper, could have been held down until its air ran out. Instead, it won, it surfaced, it kept swimming. But winning a fight like that takes more than strength. It takes lungs built different from any other diving animal on Earth, and the ability to survive pressure that would fold a submarine in half. That pressure is where our story goes next. A military submarine has a crush depth, a point where the ocean's weight finally wins and the metal hull folds like a soda can. Most submarines stay far above that line, out of caution. A sperm whale swims past it without armour, without a hull, without anything but skin, blubber, and bone. Sperm whales dive over 2 miles down, more than 3,000 metres, chasing squid into total darkness. To put that into a picture you can see, stack 9 Empire State Buildings on top of each other, then keep going down past the bottom one. That is the kind of distance a sperm whale crosses on a single breath, on a single hunting trip, then swims all the way back before running out of air. At that depth, the water pressure is more than 150 times what you feel standing on a beach. That pressure would crush a school bus flat, buckle steel pipes, and kill a human being almost instantly. A sperm whale's body handles it every single day, sometimes multiple times before lunch. How does an animal survive that? The answer is not strength, it is flexibility. A sperm whale's rib cage is not rigid like yours. It is built to fold and flex, letting the chest collapse under pressure instead of fighting it. The lungs partially deflate on the way down, air squeezed into spaces built to handle it without damage. Fighting the pressure would mean losing. The whale's body instead moves with it, bending instead of breaking. The skull holds its own secret. Inside a sperm whale's massive head sits an organ packed with a special wax, and scientists believe this wax may help control the whale's buoyancy, letting it rise and sink through the water column, almost like a submarine adjusting its own ballast tanks. Cool the wax down, and it may become denser, helping the whale sink faster into the hunting grounds. Warm it back up, and the whale may become lighter, helping it rise again after the dive. Nobody has watched this process happen directly. Deep in the black water, so much of it stays theory. But the wax organ is real, and it is enormous, taking up a huge portion of the whale's head. Whatever it does, evolution built an entire chamber dedicated to solving the deep diving puzzle. Down at these depths, there is no light at all. None. The sun's rays stop reaching seawater long before this point, leaving a whale hunting completely blind by sight. It does not matter. The whale does not need eyes down here, it needs sound instead. And the sound a sperm whale makes at these depths is loud enough to be dangerous, loud enough to be classified among the loudest noises produced by any living creature on the planet. What that sound can actually do to another animal is where things turn from strange to genuinely frightening. Stand next to a jet engine at full power and the sound alone can damage your hearing in seconds. A sperm whale's click, produced deep underwater, can reach volumes that match or beat that jet engine, and the whale fires it off in rapid bursts, aimed like a weapon at anything swimming nearby. These clicks are not for singing. They are not random noise. Sperm whales use them the way a submarine uses sonar, sending out sound, and reading the echoes that bounce back to build a picture of the dark world around them. A blind hunter in total darkness, mapping its surroundings using nothing but noise. But some scientists believe these clicks do more than just help the whale see. At close range, the sound waves may be intense enough to stun, confuse, or even injure smaller prey, essentially hitting a fish or squid with a blast of sound so powerful it disrupts their body before the whale's jaw ever gets close. Imagine being hit by an invisible wave of noise strong enough to rattle your bones from yards away. That may be the last thing some squid ever feel. This idea, sometimes called acoustic stunning, is still being studied and debated among researchers. Nobody has captured undeniable proof on camera, deep in the crushing dark where these hunts happen. But the sound levels involved are extreme enough that many scientists think it is likely, maybe even necessary, for a whale hunting fast, slippery prey in pitch blackness. The organ producing all this sound sits inside that wax-filled chamber in the whale's skull we just talked about. Air gets pushed through specialized passages, bouncing and amplifying inside the head before blasting out into the water as a focused directional click. It works something like a built-in air horn combined with a targeting system, all packed inside a skull the size of a small car. Each individual whale's clicks have their own rhythm, almost like a signature. Researchers listening through underwater microphones can sometimes identify which specific whale is calling, just from the pattern and spacing of its clicks, the same way you might recognize a friend's voice through a wall without seeing their face. Groups of whales, called pods, use different click patterns too, almost like regional accents. A pod from one part of the ocean might click in a rhythm that sounds completely different from a pod thousands of miles away, even though both are speaking the same basic language of sound. Now picture this from the squid side. No light, no warning, just sudden, crushing sound, then teeth. There is no scarier ambush on the planet than one you cannot see or hear coming, because your predator is not hunting with light or scent. It is hunting with a weapon made purely of noise, and that same skull producing this sound has one more secret hiding inside it, something scientists have never fully figured out. Cut open a sperm whale's massive head, and you will find something strange, an enormous organ, filling much of the skull, packed with a waxy substance found almost nowhere else in nature. Scientists call it spermaceti, and honestly, they're still arguing about exactly what it does. This organ can weigh close to a ton in a large adult whale. Picture a small car's worth of wax sitting inside one animal's head, taking up more space than the whale's actual brain. Whatever spermaceti is for, evolution clearly decided it mattered enough to build an entire chamber around it. For centuries, humans only cared about one thing: burning it. Spermaceti made incredible candles and lamp oil, clean burning and bright, which is exactly why whalers hunted sperm whales into near extinction during the 18 and 1900s. An entire global industry built around emptying out this one strange organ from every whale ships could catch. Nobody back then cared what the wax actually did for the whale. They just wanted the light it gave their homes. Modern scientists care deeply about that question. The leading idea connects back to sound. Spermaceti may help focus and direct the clicks a whale produces, acting almost like a lens, but for sound instead of light, aiming those powerful blasts of noise exactly where the whale wants them to go. Another idea connects to those deep dives we just covered. The wax may change density with temperature, helping control how the whale rises and sinks, working alongside the folding rib cage to make deep diving possible without a single mechanical part. Both ideas might be true at once. Nature rarely builds something that does only one job when it can multitask instead. Here is what makes this organ even stranger. No other animal on Earth has anything quite like it. Dolphins have a smaller, similar structure used for echolocation, but nothing close to the size and complexity of a sperm whale's spermaceti organ. It is one of the most unique pieces of anatomy in the entire animal kingdom, and after centuries of study, humans still cannot fully explain how every part of it works. Think about that. We have photographed the surface of Mars, we have split atoms, and there is an organ sitting inside the head of an animal living in our own oceans that we still do not completely understand. Some researchers have compared the structure to a cannon, built to concentrate sound into a tight, powerful beam rather than letting it scatter in every direction. If that comparison holds up, a sperm whale is not just clicking to see in the dark. It may be firing a weapon shaped by millions of years of evolution, tuned for a battlefield that never sees sunlight. All of this raises a question that leads somewhere even more surprising. If the head holds a wax cannon nobody fully understands, what does it take to power a brain that big, and what is that brain actually capable of? No animal alive today carries a brain bigger than a sperm whale's. Not an elephant, not any other whale, nothing. A sperm whale's brain weighs around 18 pounds, roughly 6 times heavier than the brain sitting inside your own skull right now. Size alone does not prove intelligence. A brain that big also has to run a body the length of a school bus, so some of that extra size goes toward controlling muscles, processing sound, and managing a massive frame. But even accounting for body size, sperm whales show behaviour that keeps surprising researchers who study them closely. These whales live in tight social groups called pods, usually built around related females and their young. Inside these pods, whales share babysitting duty, diving in shifts so some adults can hunt in the deep while others stay near the surface, guarding calves too young to handle the crushing pressure below. That is not instinct on autopilot. That is coordination, planning, and trust between individual animals who recognize each other and remember relationships over years. Sperm whale pods also appear to have distinct dialects. Different family groups, called clans, use different patterns of clicks to communicate, and researchers can sometimes tell which clan a whale belongs to based purely on its click rhythm, almost like recognizing someone's accent the moment they start talking. Whales from one clan rarely mix their calling patterns with whales from another, even when they are swimming through the exact same stretch of ocean. Some scientists believe certain click sequences might even work like names, a way for one whale to identify a specific other whale, rather than just broadcasting general sound into open water. If true, that would mean sperm whales are not just communicating information. They may be calling each other by identity, the same basic idea behind you calling a friend by name instead of just shouting into a crowd. Nobody has cracked the full meaning of sperm whale communication yet. It remains one of the most active and exciting areas of ocean research happening right now, with scientists using underwater microphones and pattern recognition software to try decoding what these massive brains are actually saying to each other in the dark. Mother sperm whales show behaviour that looks a lot like grief when a calf dies, staying near the body, refusing to leave for extended periods. They also show what looks like fierce collective defence, with adult whales forming a circle around threatened young, facing outward toward danger, tails pointed in like the spokes of a wheel. A brain this large, running behaviour this complex needs serious fuel, and feeding a body this size while hunting prey thousands of feet underwater requires more oxygen than almost any other animal on the planet knows how to store. That oxygen trick is where the whale's survival story gets even more extreme. Try holding your breath right now. Most people tap out somewhere between 30 seconds and 2 minutes before their body forces them to breathe. A sperm whale can hold its breath for over 90 minutes, diving the entire time, hunting in total darkness, using oxygen stored inside its own body instead of gasping for more. 90 minutes without a single breath. That is long enough to watch 2 full-length movies back to back, except instead of sitting on a couch, the whale is swimming miles beneath the surface, fighting giant squid, dodging pressure that could crush steel, and somehow never running out of air. How does any animal pull that off? The secret is not bigger lungs. In fact, sperm whales do not even fill their lungs completely before diving. The real trick is blood and muscle. A sperm whale's blood carries far more oxygen-storing molecules than yours does, packed at a much higher concentration. Its muscles are loaded with a protein called myoglobin, which works almost like a sponge for oxygen, soaking it up and holding it in reserve for the muscles to use slowly throughout the dive. Human muscle looks pale pink. A sperm whale's muscle looks almost black, stained dark by the sheer amount of oxygen-storing protein packed inside it. Before diving, The whale's body also redirects blood flow, prioritizing the brain and heart while slowing circulation to less critical areas. It is a full system shutdown and reboot, all controlled automatically, letting the whale stretch every last drop of oxygen across an hour and a half of hunting. Picture holding your breath while sprinting a marathon, fighting off an attacker, and doing complex math the entire time, all without a single inhale. That is roughly what a sperm whale's body is managing on an average deep dive. And here is the part that should genuinely worry you if you think about it too long. The whale is doing all of this in a place with almost zero room for error. If it misjudges the dive, if the hunt takes too long, if it gets tangled fighting a giant squid at the bottom of its air supply, there is no emergency oxygen tank waiting. There is only the ocean surface over 2 miles straight up, and a body that has to make it back before the air runs out completely. Scientists tracking tagged sperm whales have recorded dives lasting well over an hour, sometimes pushing close to 2 hours in extreme cases, though these longer dives happen less often and probably push the whale close to its absolute physical limit. Every single one of these dives ends the same necessary way. A long, steady climb back toward daylight, lungs empty, oxygen reserves nearly drained, racing the clock the entire way up. But surviving the dive is only half the story. What happens to everything the whale leaves behind, drifting off its own skin, turns out to build an entire hidden world of its own. A sperm whale is not just an animal swimming through the ocean. It is an entire moving ecosystem, shedding pieces of itself constantly, feeding creatures that depend on that whale and almost nothing else to survive. Whale skin sheds in large flaking patches, constantly renewing itself the same way your own skin does, just on a much bigger scale. Those flakes drift off into open water, and for certain tiny ocean creatures, this shedding skin is not waste. It is dinner. Some species have adapted specifically to feed on this drifting material, timing their lives around a passing whale's presence, the same way certain birds follow migrating herds across land. Scientists studying sperm whale skin under a microscope have found entire miniature communities living directly on the whale's surface. A floating buffet and apartment complex rolled into one massive swimming host. Barnacles attach themselves to a whale's skin and ride along for enormous stretches of ocean, filtering food from the water as the whale swims, essentially hitching a free ride across thousands of miles they could never travel on their own. Certain parasites burrow in deeper, living off the whale directly, and though this sounds unpleasant, most healthy whales carry these hitchhikers without serious harm. Picture a school bus driving down the highway with birds nesting on its roof, insects living in its tires, and smaller cars drafting behind it for free fuel savings the entire trip. That is roughly the relationship between a sperm whale and the smaller creatures riding along on its body. This floating ecosystem travels everywhere the whale travels, crossing entire oceans over the course of a single whale's lifetime. Species that live on or around sperm whales can end up thousands of miles from where they started, carried along for free by an animal that barely notices they exist. Even the whale's waste plays an enormous role in ocean life, but we'll get to that surprising twist very soon. For now, focus on this. A single sperm whale supports a web of smaller life that depends entirely on its body being there, shedding skin, hosting barnacles, providing shelter and free transportation across the open sea. Remove the whale, and that entire smaller ecosystem loses its home in an instant. Whaling during past centuries did not just kill individual whales. It likely wiped out countless smaller relationships and hitchhiking species that had evolved specifically to depend on sperm whales for survival, connections humans barely understood we were breaking at the time. And this pattern, one giant body supporting an entire smaller world, does not stop when the whale is alive. It becomes even more extreme, even more important, at the exact moment a sperm whale finally dies. What happens next, when a whale's body finally sinks to the ocean floor, might be the single strangest process happening anywhere in the ocean today. When a sperm whale dies far from shore, its massive body sinks slowly toward the ocean floor, sometimes falling for hours before finally landing in complete darkness, miles below the surface. What happens next is called a whale fall, and it might be one of the strangest, longest-lasting events in the entire ocean. A sperm whale carries enormous amounts of fat and tissue inside a body, that can weigh more than 40 tons, roughly the weight of 8 full-grown elephants combined. When that body lands on the seafloor, it becomes an instant feast for an entire community of deep-sea creatures that may have gone months or years without finding food that substantial. Sharks and other scavengers arrive first, sometimes within hours, tearing into the soft tissue in a feeding frenzy that can last for months. But this is only the opening. As the soft material gets stripped away, an entirely new wave of smaller creatures moves in, feeding on what is left behind. Bones come next, and sperm whale bones are packed with oil and fat buried deep inside their structure. Specialized worms, some discovered nowhere else on Earth except at whale falls, bore directly into the bone to reach this hidden fuel source, living their entire lives feeding on nutrients trapped inside a skeleton that used to swim through open ocean. This process does not finish in weeks. It does not finish in months. A single whale fall can continue feeding an entire community of deep sea life for decades, sometimes stretching past 50 years from the moment the body first hit the seafloor. Picture a single meal that could feed your entire town for 2 generations without running out. That is roughly the scale of nutrition packed inside one sperm whale's body, delivered directly to one of the most food-starved environments on the planet. Deep ocean floors, far from sunlight and the food chains it powers, often sit nearly empty of large nutrition sources. A whale fall changes that instantly, creating a temporary oasis of life in the middle of what is normally closer to an underwater desert. Scientists studying whale falls have discovered entirely new species living nowhere else, animals whose entire evolutionary path depends on finding a sunken whale body before their own short lives run out. Some of these species have never been observed anywhere except directly on or around a whale skeleton, meaning their survival is tied completely to something as rare and unpredictable as a whale dying in exactly the right spot. This is not decay. This is not simply an ending. A whale fall is a slow, decades-long transfer of energy, turning one enormous life into the foundation for hundreds of smaller ones, a body that keeps giving long after the animal itself is gone. But whales do not only feed the ocean floor after they die. It turns out the waste they produce while they are very much alive plays an even bigger role in keeping the entire ocean running, and possibly even in slowing down climate change itself. A sperm whale's waste does not just disappear into the ocean. It may be one of the most important fertilizers on the entire planet, feeding tiny ocean plants that pump oxygen into the air you breathe and pull carbon out of the atmosphere. Sperm whales dive deep to hunt, then return to the surface to breathe. Right there at the surface, after those deep hunting trips, they release large plumes of waste rich in iron and other nutrients pulled up from deep water. Scientists call this process a whale pump, moving nutrients from the deep ocean up to the sunlit surface layer where tiny plants called phytoplankton desperately need them to grow. Phytoplankton are microscopic, far smaller than anything you could see without a microscope, but together they form the base of nearly the entire ocean food chain. Fish eat them. Bigger fish eat those fish. Eventually that chain of eating reaches all the way up to whales themselves, completing a loop where whale waste helps grow the exact food source that keeps the whole ocean fed. Here is where this connects to something much bigger than the ocean. Phytoplankton absorb enormous amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere as they grow, similar to how trees on land pull in carbon dioxide and release oxygen. More phytoplankton growth means more carbon pulled out of the air, potentially slowing the pace of climate change happening around the entire planet. Some researchers estimate that a single great whale, over the course of its lifetime, may help capture as much carbon as thousands of trees, simply by fertilizing the growth of phytoplankton through its waste and its eventual death. When whale populations were hunted down to a fraction of their former numbers during centuries of whaling, this natural fertilizing pump would have been badly damaged too, right alongside the whales themselves. Picture an enormous garden hose, except instead of water, it is spraying nutrients that grow the ocean's tiniest, most important plants, and that hose is attached to an animal the size of a school bus, diving miles down and back every single day. This is a stunning twist most people never learn in school. An animal famous for hunting giant squid in crushing darkness, may also be quietly helping regulate the planet's climate simply through the natural cycle of eating, diving, and releasing waste near the surface. Protecting sperm whale populations, then, is not just about saving one impressive species. It may be about protecting an entire chain reaction that keeps oxygen flowing, keeps ocean food webs fed, and keeps carbon locked away instead of drifting into an already warming atmosphere. None of this happens without new whales being born and raised successfully, and sperm whale calves face a start to life almost as extreme as anything their parents will encounter in the deep. A newborn sperm whale calf enters the ocean already facing a problem no human baby ever deals with. How do you drink milk underwater in open ocean without everything simply dissolving away before you get a single sip? Sperm whale milk solves this problem by being incredibly thick, closer to the texture of toothpaste than anything resembling regular milk. This thick consistency stops it from dispersing instantly into seawater, giving the calf a real chance to actually consume it during the brief moments of nursing between breaths at the surface. The milk itself is loaded with fat, far richer than any milk produced by land mammals, built specifically to help a growing calf pack on blubber fast. That blubber layer is not optional. It is survival equipment, insulating the calf against freezing deep ocean temperatures and eventually providing the buoyancy control needed for a lifetime of extreme diving. A calf cannot dive deep like its mother right away. Young sperm whales spend their early months and years primarily near the surface, building strength, learning to hold their breath longer, and slowly working toward the kind of 90-minute dives adults handle with ease. During this vulnerable stretch, the calf depends completely on the pod for protection. This is where sperm whale society reveals something remarkable. While a mother dives deep to hunt, she cannot also watch her calf, since calves cannot follow her down into the crushing pressure zones where adults find food. Instead, other females in the pod take turns babysitting, staying near the surface with the calf while the mother is away hunting, then trading off so every adult gets a chance to feed herself too. This is cooperative parenting coordinated among multiple adult whales, who are not all the calf's biological mother, built on trust and social bonds that can last for decades. Picture an entire neighbourhood of parents trading babysitting duty so every parent gets a chance to go to work. Except the workplace sits 2 miles underwater and the daycare floats on the open ocean with predators circling nearby. Killer whales pose a real threat to young, vulnerable calves separated from adult protection. Because of this danger, adult sperm whales in a pod will form defensive formations when threatened, circling calves in the middle while adults face outward, tails positioned to strike at anything that gets too close. This formation has been documented by researchers and looks almost identical to defensive tactics used by land animals like musk oxen protecting their young from wolves. A calf nurses for years, gradually transitioning towards solid food as it grows strong enough to start diving deeper and hunting on its own. The bond between mother and between calf and the wider pod can last a lifetime, with sperm whales sometimes staying connected to their birth family for decades. All of this cooperation and care happens for one core reason. Raising a calf successfully in the open ocean is incredibly difficult, and no single whale can guarantee a calf's survival completely alone. Even sleep, something every animal needs, turns out to look nothing like what you would expect once you learn how sperm whales actually rest. Sperm whales sleep in a way that looks almost impossible if you picture it clearly. Hanging vertically in open water, head near the surface, tail drifting down toward the depths, completely still, like a herd of enormous statues floating in the dark. Researchers first documented this behavior using underwater cameras, capturing groups of sperm whales drifting motionless just beneath the surface, packed closely together, not swimming, not diving, simply hanging suspended in place for stretches of around 10 to 15 minutes at a time. This is genuinely strange behavior for such an enormous animal. Most creatures that size stay in constant motion, but during these vertical sleep sessions, sperm whales appear to shut down almost completely, drifting gently with barely any movement at all, looking from a distance like a small fleet of sunken telephone poles hanging just below the waves. Because sperm whales are mammals, they cannot fully fall asleep the way you do at night. Breathing has to stay at least partially conscious, since they need to surface regularly for air rather than breathing automatically the way fish do with gills. Many marine mammal researchers believe sperm whales use a form of rest sometimes called unihemispheric sleep, where only half the brain fully powers down at a time, letting the other half stay alert enough to manage breathing and watch for danger. 10 to 15 minutes might not sound like much rest, especially compared to the 8 or so hours you probably sleep each night. But when you add up these short vertical naps across an entire day, researchers estimate sperm whales might only need around 2 hours of total rest daily, a fraction of what most mammals require to function normally. Picture setting an alarm every 15 minutes throughout your whole night, waking briefly each time, and somehow still functioning perfectly the next day on barely any accumulated sleep. That is roughly the sleep pattern researchers believe sperm whales rely on, built for an animal that can never afford to fully lose consciousness in open, predator-filled ocean. This vertical sleeping position also connects back to that wax-filled organ inside the whale's skull. Some scientists believe the buoyancy control provided by spermaceti helps the whale hang perfectly still without sinking or floating away, keeping the whole pod suspended together in a tight, motionless group. Sleeping in a group like this likely offers protection too. A lone sleeping whale, half unconscious and barely moving, would make an easy target for predators like orcas patrolling nearby waters. A tight cluster of resting whales, tails down and bodies packed close, offers far fewer easy angles for an attack, safety built directly into how the group chooses to rest together. These sleeping formations have only been documented and studied in detail fairly recently, meaning there is likely much more left to discover about exactly how and why sperm whales rest this particular way. Rest matters because a hunting sperm whale needs everything working perfectly, especially its ability to communicate clearly with the rest of its pod using a language built almost entirely out of sound. Sperm whales do not speak in words the way you do, but they communicate through patterns of clicks so structured, so consistent, and so clearly organized that many researchers now describe it as something close to a genuine language, one humans are only beginning to decode. These structured click sequences are called coders, short bursts of clicking with specific rhythms and spacing, almost like a unique piece of Morse code repeated between whales during social moments. Different coders appear to carry different meanings or serve different social functions, though scientists are still working to fully map out exactly what each pattern communicates. What makes this even more fascinating is that coders vary between different whale communities, almost like regional dialects. A pod of sperm whales living in one part of the ocean might use a completely different set of coder patterns compared to a pod living thousands of miles away, even though every sperm whale on the planet shares the same basic vocal equipment. Groups of pods sharing similar coder patterns get grouped by researchers into larger units called clans, essentially extended cultural communities defined entirely by shared communication style rather than by location or direct family relation. Whales within the same clan tend to click in recognizably similar patterns, while whales from different clans, even swimming through the exact same waters, maintain distinctly different clicking styles, almost never blending the two together. This looks a lot like culture, learned behavior passed between individuals and generations, rather than something hardwired identically into every whale from birth. Scientists studying human language have spent decades identifying the difference between instinct and learned culture, and finding something resembling that same distinction in sperm whale communication has excited researchers across multiple scientific fields. Recent research projects using artificial intelligence and advanced pattern recognition software have started analysing enormous datasets of recorded sperm whale clicks, searching for structure similar to how human language works, complete with something resembling grammar, rhythm, and even individual identifying signatures within the coder patterns. Some scientists believe certain clicking sequences might function similarly to names, allowing one specific whale to address another individual whale directly, rather than simply broadcasting a general message to the surrounding pod. If that theory holds up under continued research, it would mean sperm whales are not just communicating broad concepts like danger or food location. They may be having something closer to individual conversations, whale calling to whale, using patterns unique enough to mean something like, "This message is for you," specifically. Picture an entire ocean humming with dialects, family names, and cultural traditions passed down for generations, all happening in a language made purely of clicking sound, invisible and inaudible to nearly everyone standing on shore. Nobody has cracked the full code yet, Sperm whale communication remains one of the most exciting open questions in all of ocean science, a puzzle that could take decades more research to fully solve. But long before scientists had recording equipment or research vessels, sailors already believed something was living and communicating inside these whales, though what they imagined was far stranger than anything researchers have actually discovered. Centuries before scientists understood anything about sperm whale biology, sailors already had their own explanation for the strange treasures and stranger sounds coming from these massive animals, and their explanation involved monsters. Old whaling crews, cutting open sperm whales on the decks of their ships, regularly found bizarre objects inside the stomach. Giant squid beaks, unidentified hooks, mysterious hardened lumps, and occasionally items nobody could immediately explain. Without any scientific understanding of deep-sea biology, sailors filled in the gaps with legend, convinced that whales were swallowing and carrying actual sea monsters trapped somewhere inside their enormous bodies. Stories spread from ship to ship and port to port, growing more dramatic with each retelling. Tales described whales as floating prisons for terrifying creatures, or described the whale itself as a monster wearing the disguise of an ordinary sea animal. Some legends blended sperm whales with entirely mythical creatures like the kraken, a giant sea monster said to drag entire ships beneath the waves using arms thick as tree trunks. Here is the twist modern science eventually revealed. The sailors were not entirely wrong to be amazed, they just misunderstood what they were actually looking at. Those hooks and unidentified objects really were remnants of massive squid, some from species so rarely encountered that scientists still consider them mysterious today. The sailors were staring directly at proof of deep-sea giants, just without the biological knowledge to understand what they were actually seeing. Ambergris added another layer of mystery to the legend. Sailors finding waxy grey lumps floating on the ocean surface, sometimes far from any whale, had no explanation for where this valuable material came from. Without modern science, it seemed almost magical, treasure appearing from nowhere, adding fuel to stories about hidden creatures and secret ocean treasures tied directly to these massive, mysterious animals. Picture standing on a wooden ship deck centuries ago, watching sailors haul a lump out of a whale's stomach that nobody can explain, worth more than a year's wages, pulled from inside an animal already famous for surviving impossible ocean depths. It is easy to understand why legends grew from moments like that. Some sailor stories also described hearing strange sounds coming from beneath their ships late at night, deep clicking and groaning noises with no clear source. Modern science now understands these sounds almost certainly came from sperm whale communication, clicks and codas travelling for miles through water, audible even through a wooden ship's hull under the right conditions. To sailors without any modern understanding of echolocation or whale biology, unexplained sounds rising from the deep at night would have felt exactly like something monstrous, calling from below. These old legends were not simply foolish superstition. They were an early, imperfect attempt to explain real, genuinely strange phenomena using the only tools available at the time, storytelling and imagination, rather than science and research vessels. Modern science has replaced most of the myth with hard data, though a few genuine mysteries from these whales still remain completely unsolved. But the search for ambergris did not stay confined to legend for long. It quickly became one of the most valuable, most brutal hunts in maritime history, chasing a treasure worth more than its own weight in gold. Ambergris, the strange waxy substance formed inside a sperm whale's gut to protect it from sharp squid beaks, became one of the most valuable natural substances on the entire planet, at times literally worth more per ounce than gold itself. For centuries, nobody fully understood where ambergris came from, but that mystery did not stop kings, perfume makers, and traders from desperately wanting more of it. Ambergris has a unique ability to make perfume scents last dramatically longer on skin, and this single property made it one of the most sought-after ingredients in the entire perfume industry for hundreds of years. Fresh ambergris, pulled directly from a whale, smells unpleasant, almost nothing like treasure. But after floating on ocean waves for months or even years, exposed to sunlight, salt water, and oxygen, it transforms completely, developing a smooth, sweet, complex scent that perfume makers prized above almost any other natural ingredient available to them. Picture stumbling across a rock on the beach that turns out to be worth more than a house. That is essentially what finding a large piece of washed-up ambergris meant for extremely lucky beachcombers throughout history, an accidental fortune delivered by ocean currents with zero warning. The largest documented lumps of ambergris found throughout history have sold for staggering amounts of money, sometimes worth well over $1 million for a single piece. Fishermen and coastal residents around the world have occasionally stumbled onto life-changing fortunes simply by finding the right lump washed up on the right beach at the right time. This incredible value drove whalers to hunt sperm whales, specifically searching for ambergris, sometimes valuing it even above the whale oil and spermaceti wax that originally fueled most of the whaling industry. Ships would cut open captured sperm whales, specifically checking their intestines for this treasure, since only a small percentage of sperm whales actually produce ambergris in any meaningful quantity. This scarcity made the hunt even more intense. Most sperm whales carry none of this valuable substance at all, meaning whalers essentially gambled every single hunt, hoping their catch might be one of the rare individuals carrying a genuine fortune hidden inside its digestive system. Kings and wealthy nobles across history prized ambergris not just for perfume, but sometimes even as a rare ingredient in food and medicine, believing it carried special properties beyond just its incredible scent. Ancient trade routes stretching across entire continents moved this substance between cultures, connecting sailors, traders, and royalty across a shared obsession with the same strange treasure. Modern perfume makers still use ambergris today, though most now rely on synthetic alternatives developed in laboratories, reducing the need to hunt wild sperm whales for this purpose. Genuine natural ambergris, when legally sourced from beach findings rather than hunting, remains extraordinarily valuable and highly sought after by specialty perfume houses even now. An entire global industry, built around chasing perfume ingredients and lamp oil, eventually pushed sperm whale populations to the brink of extinction, and what whalers found when they cut these animals open sometimes went far beyond ambergris alone. Whalers cutting open sperm whales throughout history did not just find ambergris and squid beaks. Sometimes they found things that raised entirely different, far stranger questions about exactly what these animals had been through during their long lives in the deep ocean. Historical whaling records describe hooks pulled from inside sperm whale stomachs, some clearly manufactured, others unidentified, embedded deep inside tissue that had partially healed around the object over time. This meant the whale had survived encountering these hooks for extended periods, sometimes years, carrying foreign objects inside its body the entire time without it proving fatal. Modern researchers examining stranded sperm whales continue finding unexpected objects inside their stomachs, and unfortunately, many of today's discoveries are far less mysterious and far more troubling than old whaling legends. Plastic bags, fishing net fragments, and other human-made debris have been found packed inside the stomachs of whales that eventually died from these blockages, unable to process or pass materials that never should have ended up in open ocean in the first place. Picture swallowing something by accident that your body cannot break down or pass, then carrying that mistake inside you for the rest of your life, sometimes with fatal consequences. That is the reality facing an increasing number of sperm whales as plastic pollution continues spreading through global ocean ecosystems. One well-known stranding case revealed a sperm whale stomach containing dozens of pounds of plastic debris, including bags, packaging material and rope, likely accumulated slowly over an extended period as the whale mistakenly consumed floating trash while hunting for food in increasingly polluted waters. Scientists studying cases like this describe the whale's final meal as essentially a physical record of how much plastic pollution now exists floating through the open ocean. This connects directly back to something we covered earlier, whale falls, and the decades-long process of a whale's body feeding the ocean floor after death. When a whale dies from ingesting plastic pollution rather than natural causes, that same feeding process becomes tainted, potentially spreading microplastics and toxic material into the deep seafood chain that depends on whale falls for nutrition. Older historical objects, the mysterious hooks and unidentified items from old whaling records, sparked genuine wonder and mystery about deep sea life humans barely understood. Modern plastic discoveries spark something closer to alarm, a warning sign about how thoroughly human activity now reaches even the most remote corners of the open ocean, over 2 miles below the surface, in places that seem impossibly far from any coastline or city. Sperm whales dive deeper and farther than almost any other animal on the planet, yet even they cannot fully escape encountering the impact of human civilization, carried on ocean currents into waters far from any shore. Not every discovery inside a sperm whale stomach comes from squid, plastic, or old shipwreck debris, though. Some discoveries hint at something far stranger still swimming somewhere in the deep ocean, creatures that remain completely unknown to modern science. Every giant squid beak pulled from inside a sperm whale's stomach carries a hidden message, and sometimes that message points directly toward a creature no human being has ever actually seen alive in its natural deep ocean habitat. Scientists studying squid remains found inside sperm. Whale stomachs have identified beaks belonging to squid species that do not match any specimen ever captured, filmed, or fully documented by researchers. This means sperm whales, diving miles beneath the surface into total darkness, are encountering and hunting animals that remain essentially invisible to human science, known only through fragments left behind after a whale's meal. Think about that carefully. Humans have mapped the surface of the moon in more detail than we have mapped the deep ocean floor. We have sent cameras to Mars, but entire ecosystems exist right here on Earth, just a few miles down, that remain almost completely unexplored by human eyes or equipment. The scars we talked about earlier, those massive circular sucker marks covering some sperm whale's skin, provide additional evidence pointing toward these mystery creatures. Some scar patterns are simply too large to match any confirmed giant squid specimen ever measured, suggesting whatever left those marks grew larger than anything currently documented in scientific records. Researchers have proposed that deeper, even larger squid species might exist beyond the range where submarines and deep-sea cameras typically operate. Creatures adapted to depths and pressures that make direct human observation incredibly difficult and expensive. Sperm whales, capable of diving past 2 miles down repeatedly throughout their lives, may be the only creatures on the planet regularly encountering these animals face to face. Picture an entire species living out its whole life cycle, generation after generation in near total darkness, at pressures that would instantly kill a human diver, completely unknown and undocumented by science. Its only evidence being scars and beaks left behind on the bodies of the whales that hunted it. This is not pure speculation without any scientific basis. Marine biologists regularly discover new deep-sea species using submersibles and remote cameras, confirming that huge portions of ocean life remain undocumented even today. Combined with physical evidence like unusually large scars and unmatched beak specimens, the idea that undiscovered giant squid species exist becomes a serious scientific possibility rather than simple guesswork or legend. Some researchers estimate that a significant percentage of all ocean species, potentially including large, complex animals, remain completely undiscovered by modern science. The deep ocean remains one of the least explored environments on the entire planet, despite covering a majority of the Earth's total surface area. Every time a sperm whale surfaces carrying fresh battle scars or a stomach full of unfamiliar beaks, it becomes an unintentional messenger, carrying physical proof of creatures still hiding successfully from human discovery, somewhere in the crushing darkness far below where any research vessel has ever managed to look. The deepest mysteries inside a sperm whale, it turns out, are not just about ambergris, wax organs, or communication patterns. Some of the biggest mysteries are still swimming right now, completely unknown, somewhere in the same darkness these whales call home. After all the time spent chasing monsters in total darkness, it helps to surface for a moment and look at where a sperm whale actually lives, because the scale of their range is nearly as staggering as anything hiding in the deep. Sperm whales live in nearly every ocean on Earth, from warm waters near the equator to the cold edges near polar ice. Few animals on the planet cover this much territory during a single lifetime. A single whale might travel thousands of miles across open ocean, crossing entire ocean basins the way you might cross town to visit a friend. Male sperm whales, in particular, roam farther than the females. Adult males often leave the warmer waters where they were born and head toward colder regions near the poles, hunting alone or in small loose groups rather than staying with the tight family pods that females and calves depend on. Some of the largest males recorded have measured over 60 feet long, roughly the length of 2 school buses parked end to end. Female sperm whales and their calves generally stay in warmer water year-round, forming those tight-knit pods we talked about earlier, built around cooperative babysitting and shared protection. Males, once grown, largely leave that social structure behind, returning to warmer breeding grounds only periodically to mate before heading back toward colder solo hunting grounds. This creates an interesting pattern across the whole species. Female society stays social, connected, and cooperative for decades. Male society becomes largely solitary, an enormous, powerful animal wandering alone across freezing waters, surfacing occasionally to breathe before diving right back down into the hunt. Picture an animal the size of a school bus, swimming completely alone through freezing polar water, thousands of miles from any other member of its own species, hunting giant squid in total darkness, with nobody nearby for company or backup during a fight that could turn deadly in an instant. Despite this solitary lifestyle, male sperm whales are not defenseless loners without any social behavior at all. Groups of young males sometimes travel together temporarily, forming loose bachelor groups before eventually splitting off to hunt independently as they get older and larger. These temporary bonds may offer some protection and companionship during the vulnerable transition from pod life to full solo living. Sperm whales also migrate seasonally, following prey and water temperature patterns across the calendar year, arriving in certain regions during specific months with a consistency researchers can track and predict with growing accuracy. This means specific coastal areas around the world become reliable sperm whale hotspots during certain seasons, drawing researchers, tourists, and unfortunately, sometimes ships that create dangerous collision risks for surfacing whales. The sheer range these animals cover raises an important question. With a habitat this massive, spanning nearly the entire planet's ocean surface, how much of the deep sea world remains completely unexplored by the humans trying to study them? That answer turns out to be almost uncomfortable, and it connects directly to how little we still understand about the very bottom of the ocean these whales call home. Here is an uncomfortable fact. Humans have created more detailed maps of the surface of Mars, a planet millions of miles away, than we have created of our own ocean floor, sitting just a few miles beneath the ships researchers use to study it. Less than a quarter of the entire ocean floor has been mapped in detailed, high-resolution scans using modern technology. The rest remains essentially guesswork, pieced together from older, lower-quality data or simply left blank on the map entirely. Sperm whales spend enormous portions of their lives hunting through this unmapped darkness, an environment researchers back on the surface can barely visualize with any real accuracy. Deep-sea exploration requires extraordinarily expensive, specialized equipment, submersibles built to withstand crushing pressure, remote cameras rated for extreme depths, and research ships capable of staying at sea for extended missions. Even with all that equipment, exploring the deep ocean happens slowly, one small area at a time, covering only a tiny fraction of the total territory that needs studying. Picture trying to understand an entire football field's worth of hidden objects, using only a flashlight the size of a coin, moving it slowly across the ground one narrow beam at a time. That is roughly the scale problem facing deep ocean researchers trying to map the same waters. Sperm whales navigate freely, diving thousands of feet down without any equipment at all beyond their own bodies. This gap in human knowledge means sperm whales likely know more about their deep ocean hunting grounds than any research team currently studying them. Every dive a whale takes explores territory that might genuinely be unmapped by human science, encountering creatures, terrain features, and conditions that no camera or submersible has ever directly recorded. Some scientists have started using tagged whales themselves as unlikely research partners, attaching small tracking devices that record depth, temperature, and movement patterns during natural dives. In a strange way, the whales are helping map the very ocean floor that remains too difficult and expensive for humans to fully explore on their own. This approach has already revealed surprising results. Tagged sperm whales have been recorded diving into canyons and underwater terrain features that were poorly mapped or entirely unknown before researchers started tracking exactly where these whales chose to hunt. The whales, in a sense, are revealing the shape of their own hidden world simply by living their normal lives. Even ocean temperature and chemistry data collected incidentally from whale tracking tags has provided scientists with valuable climate information, adding another layer to how these animals contribute to human understanding of the planet, far beyond simply being an animal worth studying on its own. The technology gap here matters because it means genuine mysteries remain hiding in plain sight, distributed across a habitat covering most of the Earth's surface. Every unmapped canyon, every unexplored trench, every region too deep or too remote for current equipment represents territory a sperm whale might already know intimately, territory that could be hiding species or geological features nobody has documented. As exploration technology slowly improves, researchers expect to uncover entirely new pieces of this hidden world, but for now, the ocean floor these whales call home remains one of the least understood environments on the entire planet, hiding secrets that go far beyond squid and shipwrecks alone. As global shipping traffic has grown heavier across nearly every ocean route on the planet, sperm whales now face a danger their evolution never prepared them for. Massive cargo ships and tankers moving too fast to stop before a collision becomes fatal. Sperm whales spend significant time resting near the surface, sometimes in that vertical sleeping position we described earlier, making them especially vulnerable to ship strikes during these motionless periods. A resting or slowly surfacing whale often has little time to react before a large vessel, sometimes moving at considerable speed, passes directly through the area where the whale happens to be floating. Ship strikes represent one of the leading human-caused threats to sperm whale populations today, alongside pollution and entanglement in fishing equipment. Collisions can cause fatal injuries directly, or leave whales with severe wounds that eventually prove deadly, even if the whale manages to survive the initial impact and swim away. Picture standing motionless, in the middle of a busy highway at night, wearing dark clothing, with drivers unable to see you clearly until it is far too late to safely stop. That is roughly the situation facing a resting sperm whale, when a massive cargo ship enters the same stretch of ocean without any warning system alerting the crew to slow down or change course. Researchers have worked to identify high-traffic shipping lanes that overlap significantly with known sperm whale habitat and migration routes, hoping this data can eventually lead to adjusted shipping paths or speed restrictions during certain seasons when whale activity peaks in specific regions. Some coastal areas have already implemented seasonal speed limits for large vessels, specifically designed to reduce fatal collisions with whales during peak migration periods. This problem connects directly back to something we covered earlier: the vast range these animals cover across nearly the entire planet's ocean surface. A habitat this massive means sperm whales regularly cross paths with major international shipping routes, since both whales and cargo ships tend to follow similarly efficient paths across open ocean, following currents, depth patterns, and geographic bottlenecks that funnel both ships and whales through the same narrow corridors. Modern tracking technology, including the same tagging systems helping researchers map unexplored ocean terrain, has also started helping address this collision problem directly. Real-time whale location data, when shared quickly with shipping companies, can potentially warn vessels to slow down or adjust course when entering areas with confirmed recent whale activity. Conservation groups continue pushing for stronger international regulations addressing ship speed and shipping lane placement in critical whale habitat zones, arguing that relatively small adjustments to global shipping practices could meaningfully reduce fatal collisions without creating major economic disruption for the shipping industry itself. Despite growing awareness of this problem, ship strikes remain a persistent and serious threat, one directly created by human industrial activity intersecting with an ancient migratory pattern these whales have followed for millions of years, long before any cargo ship ever crossed an ocean. This modern danger sits alongside older threats too, reminders of a hunting era that nearly wiped these animals off the planet entirely, and understanding that history helps explain just how remarkable it is that sperm whales still exist at all today. During the 1800s and 1900s, sperm whales faced a hunting campaign so intense, so relentless, and so global in scale that it pushed their entire species dangerously close to extinction, driven almost entirely by human demand for oil, wax, and perfume ingredients. Whaling ships hunted sperm whales across every ocean on the planet, chasing pods for months at a time on voyages that could last years before returning home. Crews risked their lives in small wooden boats, rowing directly up to an animal capable of destroying their vessel with a single strike of its massive tail, all in pursuit of the valuable oil and wax packed inside a whale's body. Spermaceti wax, pulled from that massive organ inside the whale's skull, burned cleaner and brighter than almost any other available fuel source at the time, making it enormously valuable for lighting homes, streets, and businesses before electricity existed. Whale oil, rendered from blubber, powered machinery and lubricated industrial equipment across a rapidly growing global economy hungry for reliable fuel sources. Picture an entire global industry, employing thousands of sailors across hundreds of ships, built almost entirely around hunting a single species down to a fraction of its original population, driven by lighting needs that modern electricity has now completely replaced. The scale of this hunting proved devastating. Population estimates suggest sperm whale numbers dropped dramatically during peak whaling decades, with some researchers estimating global populations fell by well over half compared to numbers before commercial whaling began in earnest. Entire regional populations, following specific migration routes and social structures built over countless generations, were shattered as whaling ships targeted the same hunting grounds repeatedly over decades. This hunting pressure did not just kill individual whales. It likely disrupted entire pod structures, breaking apart social bonds and cultural knowledge passed down between generations, the same coda dialects and clan structures we discussed earlier. When whaling ships eliminated large portions of a specific clan's population, unique communication patterns and cultural knowledge built over countless generations may have been lost permanently, erased before scientists ever got the chance to properly study or record them. International regulations eventually intervened, with a global moratorium on commercial whaling taking effect during the 1980s, finally ending most large-scale commercial hunting of sperm whales and other great whale species worldwide. This regulatory shift came only after populations had already been devastated across multiple generations of relentless hunting. Since that moratorium, sperm whale populations have shown gradual signs of recovery in various regions. The rebuilding numbers after such intense historical hunting takes considerable time, especially for an animal that reproduces slowly, with females typically having only a single calf every several years throughout their lengthy lifespan. Modern sperm whales alive today are essentially the descendants of survivors, animals whose ancestors managed to avoid capture during an era when their entire species faced genuine, serious risk of complete extinction. Every whale swimming through today's oceans carries that survival story in its genetic history, whether visible on the surface or not. Understanding this brutal history makes everything we have covered so far even more remarkable. These animals survived not just crushing ocean pressure, giant squid battles, and near-total darkness, but also a targeted human hunting campaign that nearly erased them from existence entirely. Modern researchers studying sperm whale populations have started using an unlikely tool to track these massive animals across entire oceans: satellites orbiting hundreds of miles above the Earth's surface, capturing images capable of spotting whales from space. Traditional whale population surveys required research vessels physically sailing through whale habitat, visually counting animals or listening for their distinctive clicks using underwater microphones. This method works, but it covers only a tiny fraction of the ocean at any given time, limited by how far a single ship can travel and how much ocean a research team can realistically observe during a single expedition. Satellite imagery changes this equation dramatically. High-resolution images captured from orbit can potentially spot whale bodies at the surface across enormous stretches of ocean simultaneously, areas far too large and remote for any research vessel to cover through traditional methods. Combined with artificial intelligence software trained to automatically identify whale shapes within thousands of satellite images, researchers can now survey population numbers across scales previously impossible to achieve. Picture trying to count blue whale-sized objects scattered across an area larger than the entire United States using nothing but photographs taken from an airplane window. Now imagine doing that same task from a satellite orbiting in space, using computer software to automatically spot and count every whale-shaped object within millions of individual images. That is the scale of what modern satellite whale tracking has made possible. This technology remains relatively new and continues improving rapidly. Early results have already helped researchers identify previously unknown whale gathering areas, revealing population concentrations and migration patterns that traditional survey methods had completely missed due to their limited geographic coverage. Combined with the tagging technology discussed earlier, which tracks individual whale movement and diving behaviour at extremely detailed levels, and acoustic monitoring systems that listen for whale clicks across entire ocean regions using networks of underwater microphones, scientists now have access to a genuinely comprehensive toolkit for studying sperm whale populations at a scale previous generations of researchers could only dream about achieving. This matters enormously for conservation efforts. Understanding exactly how many sperm whales exist, where they concentrate throughout different seasons, and how their populations are trending over time gives conservation organisations and government regulators the actual data needed to create effective protection policies, rather than relying on rough estimates and incomplete historical records. Some research teams have started combining satellite data with shipping traffic information, identifying dangerous overlap zones where whale concentrations and busy shipping lanes intersect most heavily, information that directly supports the ship strike prevention efforts covered earlier in this exploration of sperm whale life. As this technology continues advancing, researchers expect satellite tracking to become an increasingly central tool for understanding not just sperm whales, but numerous other large marine species facing similar conservation challenges across the world's oceans. Even with all this advanced technology pointed at the ocean surface, though, the true secrets of sperm whale life remain locked away in the deepest, darkest hunting grounds these animals visit, territory that satellites orbiting in space simply cannot see through thousands of feet of solid seawater. Despite every technological advance covered so far, satellites, tracking tags, underwater microphones, and improved ocean floor mapping, there remains a hunting zone deep within sperm whale territory that continues to resist nearly every attempt at direct human observation. Sperm whales regularly dive past the point where sunlight completely disappears, entering what scientists call the midnight zone, a region of ocean so deep and dark that no natural light has ever reached it, not even a single photon filtering down from the sun above. This is the primary hunting ground where sperm whales chase giant squid and other deep-sea prey, territory that remains extraordinarily difficult and expensive for human equipment to observe directly and continuously. Remote cameras deployed into this zone face enormous technical challenges. Extreme pressure threatens to crush inadequately built equipment. Total darkness means cameras require powerful artificial lighting, but the same lighting can spook or alter the natural behaviour of the deep-sea creatures. Researchers are actually trying to observe in their normal, undisturbed state. Battery life, data transmission, and simple physical durability all become massive engineering problems at these crushing depths. Because of these challenges, most footage humans have captured from this zone comes in short, isolated clips, brief windows into an environment where whales spend enormous portions of their actual lives hunting, fighting, and surviving completely unobserved by any human eye or recording device. Picture trying to understand an entire hidden world using only occasional brief glimpses captured through a keyhole, while the actual sperm whales living there experience this environment as their normal, everyday reality, spending hours at a time engaged in behaviour researchers have barely begun to document in detail. This gap explains why so much of what scientists believe about deep-sea whale hunting remains theoretical, pieced together from indirect evidence, scars, stomach contents, tracking data showing depth and movement patterns, and the occasional brief video clip captured during rare, fortunate encounters. Direct behavioural observation, the kind biologists rely on heavily when studying animals on land, remains extraordinarily limited for an animal spending massive portions of its life in this nearly unreachable zone. Some research teams have experimented with quieter, less disruptive equipment, hoping to capture more natural whale behaviour without spooking the animals or altering their normal hunting patterns through artificial light and noise pollution introduced by the observation equipment itself. Early results from these gentler approaches have shown promise, but progress remains slow given the extreme technical difficulty involved in operating equipment reliably at these depths. This fundamental observation gap means many of the more extreme squid battle theories, acoustic stunning ideas, and undiscovered species possibilities we have covered throughout this exploration remain scientifically plausible, but not fully confirmed through direct continuous observation. Scientists build reasonable evidence-based theories from indirect clues, but the actual hunting behaviour happening right now, in real time, thousands of feet below any research vessel, remains genuinely unwitnessed by human eyes in almost every single instance. As deep-sea technology continues advancing rapidly, researchers remain hopeful that future equipment will finally provide sustained, natural observation of this critical hunting zone, potentially confirming or overturning theories that have stood for decades based only on indirect evidence. Until that breakthrough finally arrives, the most extreme moments of a sperm whale's life, the actual instant of contact during a full giant squid battle in complete darkness, remain almost entirely hidden from human science, one of the last truly unwitnessed dramas remaining on planet Earth. Giant squid are not the only massive prey sperm whales pursue into the crushing dark. Evidence increasingly suggests these whales sometimes hunt something even larger and stranger, the colossal squid, a species so rarely encountered that scientific understanding of it remains remarkably limited even today. Colossal squid differ from giant squid in several genuinely disturbing ways. Their arms and tentacles feature sharp, rotating hooks, in addition to standard suction cups, essentially adding blades to an already dangerous set of weapons. Some size estimates suggest colossal squid may grow even larger and heavier than giant squid, potentially making them the single largest invertebrate animal on the entire planet. Scientific encounters with colossal squid remain exceptionally rare. Unlike giant squid, which have been captured on video in their natural deep-sea habitat in recent years, colossal squid have almost never been observed alive by human researchers in their natural environment. Most scientific knowledge about this species comes from specimens recovered from fishing operations or, notably, from remains found inside the stomachs of sperm whales that had successfully hunted and consumed them. Picture an animal so rare, so deeply hidden in ocean darkness, that the primary way humans learn about its existence comes from studying what a completely different predator managed to eat and partially digest. Sperm whales, in this sense, have become one of science's most important sources of information about an animal humans have almost never directly encountered themselves. The hooks found on colossal squid arms leave a different type of scar compared to standard giant squid suction marks, and researchers examining sperm whale skin have identified wound patterns consistent with colossal squid encounters, adding physical evidence supporting the idea that these battles happen regularly in the deep ocean, far more often than the handful of confirmed specimens might initially suggest. If colossal squid truly rival or exceed giant squid in size, a sperm whale hunting, one would face an even more dangerous fight than anything covered earlier in this exploration. Sharper hooks combined with potentially greater size and strength would create a battle where the whale's own thick blubber and tough skin face a genuinely serious test, explaining some of the most severe scarring patterns researchers have documented on certain individual whales. This raises an unsettling possibility. If colossal squid remain this poorly understood despite occasionally appearing in whale stomachs, what other massive, dangerous deep-sea creatures might exist in this same hunting zone, equally hidden from direct human observation, known only through fragmentary evidence left behind after a whale's successful hunt? Marine biologists continue pushing to study colossal squid more directly, using specialized deep-sea equipment and, when possible, examining specimens recovered from whale stomachs or accidental fishing catches with increasingly advanced scientific techniques unavailable to earlier generations of researchers. For now, though, the colossal squid remains one of the ocean's most genuine mysteries, a potential rival in size to the giant squid, hunted successfully by sperm whales in battles that happen entirely out of human sight, in darkness where only scars and stomach contents survive to tell the story afterward. Sperm whales rank among the largest predators on the entire planet, but even an animal this massive is not completely free from danger, and one predator in particular has been documented successfully targeting sperm whales despite the incredible size difference involved. Orcas, sometimes called killer whales, despite technically belonging to the dolphin family, hunt in highly coordinated groups using sophisticated pack tactics that allow them to successfully target prey far larger than any single orca could handle alone. While adult sperm whales are generally too large and too well defended for routine orca predation, vulnerable individuals, particularly young calves separated from pod protection, face genuine documented risk. Coordinated orca pods have been observed working together strategically, using teamwork remarkably similar to how wolves hunt large prey on land, isolating a target from group protection before launching a sustained, coordinated attack designed to exhaust and overwhelm even an animal many times larger than any individual orca involved in the hunt. This directly explains the defensive formations we discussed earlier, where adult sperm whales circle vulnerable calves, facing outward with tails positioned to strike at approaching threats. This behaviour likely evolved specifically in response to genuine historical predation pressure from coordinated orca attacks, a defensive strategy refined over countless generations of encounters between these two massive ocean predators. Picture a pack of skilled wolves working together to bring down prey many times larger than any individual wolf, using teamwork, patience, and coordinated strategy rather than raw individual strength alone. Orcapods hunting sperm whale calves operate using remarkably similar tactical principles, despite existing in a completely different environment. Adult sperm whales are far from defenseless against these attacks. Their massive size, powerful tail, and ability to bite using rows of sharp teeth make them a genuinely dangerous target even for coordinated orca groups. Successful orca predation on sperm whales typically requires significant numerical advantage and careful tactical coordination, rather than representing a routine, easy hunting opportunity. Researchers studying these interactions have documented adult sperm whales successfully driving off orca attacks entirely, using their combined size, tail strikes, and defensive formations to protect vulnerable pod members until the threat retreats. These successful defenses highlight just how seriously sperm whale pods take coordinated protection, treating orca threats with the same defensive urgency they might apply to protecting calves from any other serious danger. This predator relationship adds another genuinely dangerous layer to sperm whale life beyond giant squid battles and crushing ocean pressure. Even after surviving a 90-minute dive fighting a massive squid in total darkness, a sperm whale returning to the surface with a vulnerable calf still faces potential danger from coordinated pack hunters patrolling the exact same waters. This layered danger, from squid below and orcas above, helps explain why sperm whale social structure evolved to be so tightly cooperative and defensively organized. Surviving as a species required more than individual size and strength. It required community, coordination, and constant readiness to defend against threats approaching from multiple directions at once. In an ocean that offers no truly safe zone at any depth, sperm whale clicks are loud enough to stun prey at close range, as we covered earlier, but their reach extends far beyond simple hunting purposes. Under the right ocean conditions, these powerful sounds can travel extraordinary distances, potentially reaching hundreds of miles through deep water before finally fading into silence. Sound travels differently through water compared to air, moving faster and often much farther under the right conditions. Deep ocean water contains layers where temperature and pressure create something scientists call a sound channel, a natural pathway that allows certain sound frequencies to travel with remarkably little loss in strength over enormous distances, sometimes spanning hundreds of miles before finally dispersing completely. Sperm whale clicks, particularly the loudest and most powerful bursts, can potentially exploit this natural sound channel, meaning a click produced by one whale might theoretically be detected by another whale swimming hundreds of miles away, assuming that distant whale has equipment sensitive enough to pick up the signal after it travels that far through open ocean water. Picture shouting a single word and having someone hear it clearly from the distance between New York City and Chicago. That is roughly the scale of distant sperm whale communication might theoretically cover under ideal deep ocean conditions, an almost unbelievable range for sound produced by a single animal. This long-range communication potential raises fascinating questions researchers continue investigating. Could sperm whales coordinate movements or share information across ocean basin-scale distances using this natural sound channel as an enormous underwater communication network? Could distant pods somehow stay aware of each other's general location or activity, even while physically separated by distances that would take weeks or months to swim directly? Scientists remain cautious about overstating exactly how much information travels this far in practical terms. Background ocean noise, other marine life, and natural interference all reduce how clearly a distant signal might actually be received and understood by another whale far away. But the physical capability for extreme long-distance sound travel is real and well documented, even if the practical communication value at maximum range remains less certain and still under active scientific investigation. human activity has increasingly complicated this natural communication system. Shipping noise, sonar equipment, and industrial ocean activity have dramatically increased background noise levels throughout much of the world's oceans compared to historical, pre-industrial conditions. Some researchers worry this rising noise pollution may be reducing the effective range of natural whale communication, essentially shrinking the size of the ocean from a communication standpoint, even though the physical water itself has not changed at all. This connects directly back to the shipping lane concerns discussed earlier regarding ship strikes. Increased vessel traffic does not just create physical collision risk, it may also be quietly disrupting an ancient, extraordinarily long-range communication system these whales have relied on for millions of years, long before any engine ever disturbed the natural quiet of the open ocean. Protecting sperm whales, then, involves more than just preventing direct physical harm. It may require thinking carefully about preserving the acoustic environment these animals depend on, an invisible, sound-based world stretching across distances most people never consider when picturing what ocean conservation actually requires protecting. Ambergris earned its fortune through scent alone for centuries, but modern chemistry has revealed something even stranger hiding inside this substance. Complex chemical compounds that took scientists generations to fully understand, some of which remain genuinely difficult to reproduce artificially even with today's advanced laboratory technology. The primary compound responsible for ambergris' remarkable scent-stabilizing properties is called ambrine, a chemical that forms slowly as ambergris ages and oxidizes while floating on ocean waves for months or years after leaving the whale's body. This aging process transforms ambrine through exposure to sunlight, salt water, and oxygen, gradually converting the substance into the complex, prized fragrance compounds perfumers have valued for centuries. Understanding this chemical transformation took remarkably advanced scientific equipment and techniques, tools that simply did not exist for most of human history when ambergris was already being traded as a precious commodity. For centuries, humans valued and traded this substance with zero understanding of the actual chemistry happening inside it, relying entirely on scent alone to judge quality and value. Picture using and treasuring something valuable for thousands of years without understanding even the most basic chemistry behind why it works the way it does. That describes humanity's relationship with ambergris for the overwhelming majority of recorded history, right up until relatively recent chemical analysis finally cracked its secrets. Modern perfume companies have developed synthetic alternatives that attempt to recreate ambergris' unique scent, stabilizing properties without requiring genuine whale-sourced material. These laboratory alternatives have reduced commercial demand for natural ambergris significantly, though they still have not perfectly replicated every subtle characteristic that makes genuine, naturally aged ambergris so distinctly prized by specialty perfume makers who prioritize authenticity over cost. This chemical complexity connects back to the original biological mystery covered earlier. Scientists still do not fully understand exactly why only some sperm whales produce ambergris, while most do not, despite every sperm whale presumably eating similar squid containing similar indigestible beaks. Some researchers suspect specific dietary differences, individual body chemistry variations, or perhaps even genetic factors might explain why certain whales develop this substance while others process squid beaks through entirely different, less dramatic digestive pathways. Chemical analysis of ambergris samples has also allowed researchers to estimate roughly how old certain samples are based on their exact chemical composition, since the transformation from fresh, unpleasant-smelling material into prized, sweet-smelling ambergris happens gradually and somewhat predictably over time under normal ocean exposure conditions. This scientific understanding adds a strange final layer to ambergris' incredible story, a substance discovered by accident, treasured for centuries without any understanding of its origin, driving hunting and exploration across entire continents, eventually revealed through modern chemistry to be an intricate, slowly transforming compound, born from a whale's simple, biological defense against sharp squid beaks it could never fully digest. Few substances in human history carry a stranger complete story, starting as protection against injury, transforming through years of ocean exposure into treasure, and finally, centuries later, becoming fully understood through careful modern laboratory analysis most ancient traders could never have imagined possible. 19th century whaling history includes one story so dramatic it directly inspired one of literature's most famous novels, the sinking of the whaling ship Essex, rammed and destroyed by an enormous aggressive sperm whale in 1820. The Essex was hunting sperm whales in the Pacific Ocean when crew members spotted an unusually large bull whale, estimated at roughly 85 feet long, behaving strangely near the ship. Rather than fleeing from the hunting vessel like whales typically did, this particular whale turned directly toward the Essex and rammed the hull with tremendous force, not once, but twice, ultimately breaking through the ship's structure badly enough to sink the entire vessel. Surviving crew members, forced into small whaling boats far from any shore, faced a horrific ordeal lasting months, drifting across the open Pacific Ocean with severely limited food and water supplies. This desperate survival story, involving unimaginable hardship during the long journey back toward any rescue, eventually inspired author Herman Melville to write the novel Moby Dick, one of the most famous pieces of American literature ever published. Picture an animal the length of 2 school buses deliberately turning to attack a fully crewed sailing ship, using its massive head as a battering ram powerful enough to break through wooden hull planks that had successfully survived storms and ocean voyages for years beforehand. Whether this specific whale attacked out of genuine aggression, confusion, or some other reason entirely remains debated among historians and marine biologists studying the incident today. Some researchers suggest the whale may have been reacting defensively after hearing the underwater sounds of nearby whales already being hunted and injured by the ship's crew, essentially fighting back after recognizing the Essex as an active, ongoing threat to its pod. This incident stands as one of the most well-documented historical examples of a sperm whale successfully destroying a large ship through direct intentional confrontation, though smaller-scale incidents involving whales damaging boats occurred more frequently throughout the broader history of commercial whaling operations worldwide. The raw physical power required to sink a wooden whaling ship illustrates just how much force these animals can generate when using their massive heads as weapons, the same basic anatomy housing that mysterious spermaceti organ discussed earlier in this exploration. A structure built primarily for buoyancy control and sound production apparently doubles effectively as a devastating battering ram when circumstances demand it. Modern whale encounters rarely involve anything close to this level of aggressive confrontation, since commercial whaling has largely ended, and most current human interaction with sperm whales involves careful, respectful research observation rather than active hunting that might provoke genuinely defensive or retaliatory behaviour from these powerful animals. The Essex disaster remains a permanent reminder that despite everything covered throughout this exploration, from gentle cooperative parenting to complex vocal communication, sperm whales possess genuine, devastating physical power when circumstances push them toward direct, deliberate confrontation with something as large and seemingly formidable as a full-sized sailing ship. Beyond ambergris and stomach contents examined after death, researchers have discovered another surprising source of scientific information about deep-sea life: sperm whale vomit, occasionally recovered floating at the ocean surface or collected during specific research encounters. When sperm whales cannot fully digest certain hard materials, particularly large accumulations of squid beaks, they sometimes regurgitate this material rather than passing it through their entire digestive system. This vomited material, while certainly unpleasant to examine closely, provides researchers with valuable, relatively fresh specimens of deep-sea squid beaks without requiring an actual whale death or stranding to access this information. Scientists studying these regurgitated samples have identified numerous squid beak specimens representing species that remain otherwise extremely difficult to study through any other research method. Since colossal squid and other deep-sea species are so rarely encountered directly by human researchers, whale vomit occasionally represents one of the only practical sources for obtaining physical specimens connected to these mysterious, poorly understood animals. Picture treasure hunting through something most people would consider genuinely disgusting, carefully sorting through recovered whale vomit, specifically searching for rare beak specimens that could represent entirely undocumented squid species. This is genuine, serious scientific work, however strange it might initially sound to someone unfamiliar with deep-sea biology research methods. Researchers can extract meaningful data from these beak specimens beyond simply identifying species. Chemical analysis of the beak material can sometimes reveal information about the squid's diet, approximate age, and even roughly which ocean region it likely lived in, based on subtle chemical signatures that vary depending on water chemistry and available food sources across different geographic areas. This method offers a genuine research advantage compared to waiting for whale strandings or attempting extraordinarily difficult and expensive direct deep-sea observation. Vomited material can sometimes be collected relatively easily by researchers monitoring known whale populations, providing a steady, ongoing source of specimens without requiring the death of either the whale or the squid species being studied. Some research expeditions have specifically targeted areas with known sperm whale activity, hoping to recover naturally occurring vomit samples that wash up or float near the surface after a whale expels material it could not properly digest. While this might sound like an unusual research strategy, it has genuinely contributed valuable data to ongoing efforts to understand deep-sea squid diversity and distribution patterns across different ocean regions. This connects back to earlier, exploring how much of our current scientific knowledge about deep-sea creatures comes indirectly through sperm whales, whether through scars, stomach contents examined after death, or now through vomited material collected without requiring any harm to come to the whale itself. Sperm whales, it turns out, serve as an unexpected ongoing scientific resource in multiple different ways throughout both their lives and eventual deaths, each method revealing another small piece of the deep ocean puzzle that remains otherwise nearly impossible for human researchers to access directly on their own. A sperm whale's teeth hold secrets beyond their obvious use for gripping prey during a hunt. Cut one open and examine it under a microscope, and researchers can read growth layers that record an extraordinary detailed timeline of that individual whale's entire life history. Sperm whale teeth grow in layers, similar in concept to tree rings, adding new material in a pattern connected directly to the whale's age and yearly biological cycles. By carefully counting and analysing these growth layers, researchers can determine a whale's precise age at time of death, sometimes revealing individuals who lived well past 60 years, with some estimates suggesting maximum lifespans potentially reaching 70 years or more under ideal conditions. Beyond simple age determination, chemical analysis of these same tooth layers can reveal detailed information about diet, health, and even environmental conditions the whale experienced during specific years of its life. Certain chemical markers deposited within each growth layer shift based on what the whale was eating and where it was swimming during that particular period, essentially creating a chemical diary embedded directly within the tooth structure itself. Picture reading someone's entire life diary, but instead of words on paper, the information exists as microscopic chemical variations layered inside a single tooth, requiring specialized laboratory equipment to properly interpret and translate into a meaningful, readable life story. This research method has revealed fascinating details about individual whale lives that would otherwise remain completely unknown and unrecorded. Researchers have identified specific years where individual whales experienced notable dietary shifts, potentially connected to changes in prey availability, migration pattern adjustments, or even broader environmental changes affecting the whale's usual hunting grounds during that particular period of its extended lifetime. Some studies have even detected chemical signatures suggesting exposure to environmental pollutants, allowing researchers to essentially track how human industrial activity has impacted individual whales throughout their own personal lifetimes, adding yet another layer of evidence connecting human activity directly to measurable impacts on these deep ocean animals. Tooth analysis also helps researchers better understand sperm whale reproduction patterns, since chemical markers can sometimes indicate approximate timing of significant life events like reaching sexual maturity or experiencing major migration pattern changes connected to breeding behavior throughout an individual whale's extended life. This detailed biological record adds meaningful context to many topics covered throughout this exploration. When researchers study scarring patterns from squid battles, tooth analysis can sometimes help estimate roughly when during the whale's life certain significant encounters likely occurred, adding a rough timeline to reconstruct specific chapters within an individual whale's dramatic, largely unwitnessed life story. Every sperm whale, it turns out, carries a detailed chemical record of its entire life story embedded directly within its own teeth, waiting patiently for careful scientific analysis to eventually unlock and properly interpret decades of hidden biological history that would otherwise have remained completely unknown and unrecorded forever. Deep-sea exploration continues revealing surprises even among animals as intensely studied as sperm whales, and recent research has occasionally uncovered genuinely unexpected findings that challenge previously confident scientific assumptions about these massive, well-documented predators. Researchers studying sperm whale populations across different ocean regions have discovered subtle but genuinely significant genetic and behavioural differences between geographically separated groups, raising ongoing scientific questions about whether certain populations might eventually deserve classification as distinct subspecies rather than simply regional variations within a single, unified global species. These population differences extend beyond simple genetics. Distinct clan structures, different coda-dialect patterns, and even apparent differences in hunting behaviour and preferred prey species have been documented between sperm whale populations living in different ocean regions, suggesting these animals may be far more behaviourally diverse across their global range than earlier research initially assumed. Picture discovering that people living on opposite sides of the world, while clearly the same species, have developed such distinct cultural practices, communication styles, and lifestyle patterns that studying one population barely prepares you to understand another population's specific behaviour and social structure. Similar genuine diversity appears to exist across different global sperm whale populations, each shaped by its own specific regional environment and multi-generational cultural history. Some researchers have proposed that certain isolated sperm whale populations might benefit from more targeted, population-specific conservation strategies rather than broad, generalized protection approaches designed around assumptions from better studied populations that may not accurately represent every regional group's specific needs and behavioral patterns. This growing understanding of population diversity connects directly back to the whaling history discussed earlier. If distinct populations carry unique genetic characteristics and cultural knowledge built over countless generations, then historical whaling that devastated specific regional populations may have permanently erased genuinely unique genetic diversity and cultural knowledge that simply cannot be recovered or replaced by whales from entirely different, distantly related populations elsewhere in the world's oceans. Advanced genetic sequencing technology, only recently becoming affordable and practical enough for widespread research application, continues revealing new layers of population diversity that earlier generations of researchers, working with more limited technology, simply could not have detected or properly documented using the tools available to them at the time. This ongoing scientific surprise reinforces a theme running throughout this entire exploration. Despite centuries of study, hunting, and modern research investment, sperm whales continue revealing genuinely new information to dedicated researchers, suggesting our scientific understanding of this species, however extensive it might currently seem, likely remains meaningfully incomplete in ways we have not yet even identified. Every new research technique applied to sperm whale study, from satellite tracking to genetic sequencing to tooth chemistry analysis, continues uncovering additional layers of complexity, suggesting the more carefully humans study these animals, the more we discover just how much more remains genuinely unknown about a species many people assume science has already fully documented and understood. Every mystery covered throughout this exploration, from ambergris to acoustic stunning to genuinely undiscovered deep-sea species, connects back to a single, remarkable fact. Sperm whales have survived and adapted through conditions that would instantly destroy almost any other animal on the planet. Crushing pressure capable of folding a submarine, total darkness stretching across most of their active hunting lives, violent battles against massive weaponized prey, coordinated predator attacks from orcas targeting vulnerable young, centuries of intense commercial hunting that nearly eliminated the entire species, modern threats including ship strikes, ocean noise pollution, and plastic contamination reaching even the most remote hunting grounds miles beneath the surface. Despite every one of these challenges, sperm whales persist, adapting through biological innovations that continue surprising scientific researchers even after centuries of dedicated study. A folding rib cage built specifically to handle extreme pressure without breaking. Blood and muscle chemistry engineered for extraordinary oxygen storage during extended dives. A massive, still not fully understood organ producing sound waves, powerful enough to potentially stun prey from a distance. Social structures sophisticated enough to include cooperative babysitting, coordinated defense formations, and communication patterns showing genuine hints of distinct regional culture. Picture an animal facing this complete combination of challenges, biological, environmental, and increasingly human-caused, and somehow not just surviving, but maintaining social bonds, raising vulnerable young successfully, and continuing complex communication patterns that may stretch back many thousands of generations into the deep evolutionary past. This resilience carries genuine lessons extending beyond simple biological curiosity. Sperm whales demonstrate that successful survival often depends less on raw individual strength alone and more on cooperation, adaptation, and complex social structures capable of protecting vulnerable members while still allowing individuals enough independence to hunt, explore, and thrive across an enormous, largely unmapped global habitat. Conservation efforts protecting sperm whales today are not simply about preserving one impressive record-breaking species for its own sake. As covered earlier, these animals play genuinely significant roles in broader ocean health, from nutrient cycling that supports entire marine food webs to potential carbon capture effects that may meaningfully influence global climate patterns extending far beyond their immediate ocean habitat. Every scar, every dive, every click, and every generation of cooperative parenting represents millions of years of evolutionary refinement, producing an animal perfectly, remarkably adapted to thrive in one of the most extreme, dangerous environments existing anywhere on the entire planet. Understanding sperm whales, then, offers something valuable beyond simple scientific curiosity about one particular species. It offers a genuine window into how life itself can adapt successfully to seemingly impossible conditions, provided the right combination of physical adaptation, social cooperation, and evolutionary time comes together correctly across countless careful generations. As research technology continues advancing rapidly, our understanding of these remarkable animals will likely keep expanding too, revealing additional layers of adaptation and behavior that remain completely unknown today, waiting patiently in the deep, dark hunting grounds these whales have called home for millions of years. Everything explored throughout this journey, from a single indigestible squid beak to satellite tracking systems monitoring entire ocean populations, points toward one final, genuinely humbling conclusion. Sperm whales remain far more mysterious than most people ever realize, despite centuries of dedicated human study and scientific investigation. We have covered ambergris worth more than gold, formed by accident inside a whale's gut, scars from battles against massive unidentified creatures, pressure that would crush a school bus, survived using a folding ribcage and blood built for extraordinary oxygen storage, a brain 6 times the size of yours, running social structures showing genuine hints of distinct communication culture passed between generations. Whalefools feeding entire deep-sea ecosystems for 50 years, a poop pump potentially fighting climate change on a genuinely planetary scale. Every single one of these mysteries connects back to the same basic truth. Sperm whales live primarily in a world humans have barely begun exploring, diving miles beneath the surface into total darkness, where cameras struggle to function, submersibles cost fortunes to operate, and most direct observation remains genuinely limited even using today's most advanced available technology. Picture standing at the edge of the ocean, looking out at calm, seemingly unremarkable water stretching toward the horizon, knowing that just a few miles down, in absolute darkness, animals the size of school buses are engaged in battles against creatures science has never fully documented, using sound as a weapon, navigating using organs scientists still cannot completely explain, all happening constantly every single day, completely invisible to anyone standing on shore. The undiscovered squid species hinted at through unusually large scars remain out there right now, somewhere in the crushing dark, living their entire life cycles without a single human ever directly observing them. The full meaning behind sperm whale communication patterns remains only partially decoded, an ongoing scientific puzzle that could take additional decades of dedicated research before reaching anything resembling a complete, satisfying answer. The exact mechanics behind that mysterious wax organ inside every sperm whale's skull remain debated even among the world's leading marine biology researchers studying this exact question today. This should not feel disappointing, it should feel genuinely exciting. An animal, this large, this well-known by name, swimming through oceans covering the majority of our entire planet's surface, still manages to hold on to genuine, significant mysteries that modern science has not yet fully solved, despite centuries of dedicated hunting, observation, and increasingly advanced technological investigation. Sperm whales carry the ocean's biggest secrets inside their bodies, written in scar tissue, embedded in ambergris, coded into clicking patterns, and locked away in a wax-filled skull that continues to challenge everything scientists thought they understood about this genuinely remarkable species. Somewhere right now, miles beneath any ship, any satellite, and any research vessel, a sperm whale is diving back into total darkness, continuing a hunt that has played out largely unchanged and almost entirely unwitnessed for millions of years, carrying secrets inside its body that humans have only just begun to properly understand.